but I didn't mind. They sent me back to school, and they also sent me to weather school, and I was a weather observer, and took weather observations, and so I can look outside and look at the clouds, and we had judged the height of them. Well, sometimes we could use instruments that we didn't always have them, and still had to put out a report. And you put it out on the teletypes, and you talk to airplanes, and they would call and ask for weather. What's the weather like in Minneapolis? And we'd have all that information off the teletypes, and we would give him anything he wanted in relation to weather, or and they would file flight plans, and he kicked all the information down and put it out on teletypes, and when he's ready to go, and they can call the center at the time, they call them air traffic control centers, and they would have a clearance for them, an assigned route, altitude, and he's ready to go. He calls and gets his clearance, and away he goes. One night when I was working, a guy, we were out in the field, like say this block was an empty field, and it was in grass, and they had it designated as a runway, and they just stuck out some lights that we could control if you needed night landings. And so one night I was there doing what I had to do, and the door opens up. After dark, you don't see anybody out there. Somebody opens up the door and walked in, and they said they landed out there in the field. And it was very, very rough, and nothing but sand and tufts of grass growing in the sand, and that was a runway. And they had taken off at a smaller airport, and they were on the way to Florida. And I said, how in the world did you get in? I didn't have the lights on. They had to request the lights be turned on, but they got in. So they had to use the restroom, so they took care of themselves, and then they were getting ready to go, and I went outside and I pointed a different direction. I said, this is where you turn, and this is where you go, and so I go back in the office, and they walk out to their airplane. I hear them running up, but just the running up of the airplane, it vibrates, you know, and they settle the wheels into the sand. So when they release the brakes to go forward and take off, the thing just tips upside down on its nose. And of course, then they came back to the tower. I mean, to the station, and they didn't know what to do. Well, everything happens. You got to log it. You got to make sure everything gets down. Now that an incident, they had rented the plane from some other airport, and they just stopped into Grantsburg to use the restroom, and now they didn't know what to do. So they go out to the airplane, and they get it running again. It had been upside down, you know, the prop was bent, and I wasn't supposed to leave the facility to go out there but they were still running around out there. I could see them, and I tore off like a wild Indian, ran out there to them, maybe a distance of 400 or 500 yards, quite a distance, and so I talked them to come back in again, and then I got all the information from them that they were, I don't want to say they were drunk, but they had been drinking. He said, "What do you suggest that I tell him what to do?" And he says, I said, "Call the sheriff's department, let them know what happened, and let them help you get assistance." And I don't know if they did. And I told him, I says, "I'm not supposed to be out here." I said, "I got business to do, take care of, and put out broadcasts and take weather observations." And so they finally got airborne, and as a result, I never heard. I had to put a log entry in the log as to what happened. I got called in on that, but I says, "What am I supposed to do?" Yeah, that's right. You did more than what you were supposed to have done. So it's one of those little incidents that happens.